From personal ads to porn stars, astrology to testimonials, it's the hottest talk of talk radio. It's the Derek and Romaine Show.
Derek here, along with Romaine, and joining us now, it is actor James Duval. He is in the it's not upcoming because we're pre-recording this. It's already there. Went through this whole 5-minute thing with him at the beginning of it's February.
You're a mess.
Anyway, Cutaways. It is now available on Amazon Prime. And you can check it out there. And you can check out James in social media. He is on Twitter/X and Instagram as Real James Duval, Duval. James, we're very excited to have you here on the show because
I'm excited to be here.
I have known about you and been a big fan of your work for a long time now. And so it's great to have you joining us.
That's great to be here. Honestly, I'm very flattered that you had asked. So, yeah, thank you for having me.
Can I be honest, though? The person who's the absolute most excited that you're on our show is not Derek and/or Romaine. It is Minnie Romaine, my daughter, Romy, who, when I told her that you were going to be on the show, literally squealed in delight. She's a teenager and said, "Oh my God, isn't Donnie Darko? He's my favorite. I'm so mad that you get to talk to him. This isn't fair. Oh my gosh." And I said, "Sorry, babe."
Tell her I'm so flattered, and honestly, that's very kind of her. I'm very moved. I mean, I did, like I said, beyond working, you kind of don't. I mean, I've done some pretty crazy movies over the years, so I just learned to just love what I do and then not listen to the chatter afterwards, good or bad, But I'm not going to lie, it's very nice to hear that. Yeah, please send her my love.
It is literally her favorite movie. She has posters of it on her wall. You don't even know. It's psychotic. And so I was very excited to tell her that you were going to be on the show, and she was thrilled and very jealous.
Oh, well, that's one of the perks of your job. That's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely.
And Donnie Darko is, an interesting phenomenon in your film career because it was not a hit when it came out, but it really was a movie that built on, airings on cable and in home video and DVD and now streaming, and has really built a huge following in the last 25 years since it came out, which doesn't always happen that way.
No, I mean, I don't know. I think I seem to have made a career out of doing these movies that when they come out, they don't do very well, but over time they seem to find their place in the metaverse, so to speak, or the film cinematic universe, which has been really nice because I'm very proud of, my career, and I'm proud of a lot, not every movie, but of the early ones, everything, I want to say in the 90s. I was very proud of those. And to some degree, like I said before, you don't listen to the chatter, you just kind of do what you do and you keep moving forward. But it does kind of, how would I put it? It's a bit disheartening when you do something and you're very proud of and you love, and it doesn't seem to be received very well. From I think the Doom generation and Nowhere up to SLC Punk and Donnie Darko in May, only for them years later to sort of find their audience. And I mean that kind of in a ways, makes up for it, makes it all the more worth it that these movies have found their place. Because Donnie Darko in particular was a huge box office failure. I don't even think we made $1 million at the box office in the entire 3-week run.
I have been.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I've been championing an idea recently, because the Oscars, they finally added casting as a category at the Oscars, which I think is terrific because obviously, as casting is a really important part of this business, and it can sometimes be make or break to a project. Like the right cast coming together can make magic. But I have this. I'm starting a one-person campaign to start having basically a version of the Oscars, but for movies 20, 25 years later, because sometimes in the moment, you don't really know what the cultural impact of a movie is going to be or how it will resonate with audiences. Sometimes it takes time for an audience to find a movie. Sometimes the movie speaks to, as is the case with Donnie Darko with Romaine's 18-year-old daughter, it speaks to a generation that wasn't even alive when the movie came out. And so I think, especially for casting, because sometimes casting directors cast, a collection of young actors or unknowns who later on go on to have extraordinary careers. And sometimes, we should give an award to a casting director who 20 years ago was like, who's great? This person you've never heard of before, but I'm going to stake my professional reputation on, who I think they're going to be. So I think that Donnie Darko makes a strong case for this kind of retroactive look at, hey, just because it wasn't loved in the moment doesn't mean there isn't a lot here for people to latch onto.
Yeah, again, it's very interesting. Timing's very important when you release a film too. I think, sometimes you release a film and I don't think that the audiences are people are ready for it necessarily, so to speak, from time to time. But I know that, we released Donnie Darko a month after 9/11, so it probably wasn't, we just had the jets crash into the Twin Towers. So I think the last thing people wanted to see was an airplane engine fall on someone's house, just sort of diving deeper into that sort of real nightmare. So I definitely think that had a bit of an effect, like a detrimental effect for the movie. But yeah, years later, it seems to, through word of mouth and, passing it off, it seems to have found its audience, and it's funny because I hear the same thing about the Doom generation as well, that over the years, people were just sort of got handed this, this is the craziest movie you're ever going to see it. So a lot of people, saw it because it was passed down or saw it on a Russian bootleg site or whatnot, which is, I know, and Gregg Araki has said this as well. We were overjoyed that at least it got out there to people. I mean, you really, at the end of the day, just want to make your movie available to people and then it's up to them if they, enjoy what you make or not. But, you hope to find the audience that responds and, enjoys the fruits of your labor.
Right.
So to speak. Yeah.
Now, you have been something of a muse for Gregg Araki because you have been in many of his projects, and actually recently the Criterion Collection added several of his films that you're in into the collection. So as somebody who loves film, because I know you do, what was that like when you heard that your films would be part of the Criterion Collection? And then I have a Criterion follow-up for you of a fantasy trip to the Criterion Closet.
Well, it's I mean, for me, to be honest, and I know speaking for Gregg too, we spent quite a bit of time together working on the re-release for everybody and pulling everything out we had, because Criterion is really quite thorough. But it's for us, it's and I know speaking for him too, it's the biggest honor in the world for us. I mean, I really kind of, for us, we were very proud of the movies we made, and that will always stand. But we do see some sort of artistic validation from the outside world, to be recognized by Criterion and have them come on board and help us restore this and really, create the best versions of these movies possible and getting out to the fans for a new generation. And, and in a way, I'm almost speechless because it's like making your way into film history.
Yeah.
I have to say, yeah, I mean, it is, in a lot of ways, it's like, for me, it's one of the biggest achievements of a lifetime, to be quite honest, to be a part of those films that were recognized and a part of Gregg's legacy. I met Gregg when I was 18 and we made Totally Fucked Up for 20 grand and shot it on weekends, 6 or 7 months to shoot, So these were really labors of love for us, without ever the idea that we didn't set out to make hit movies. We knew we weren't doing that, but we knew we were making movies that reflected how we felt. And, it was the beginning of the 90s and the end of the 80s and coming out of the Reagan era, especially at the age we both were, it was a very, very trying time for us, if anything, it's kind of wild and crazy to see how everything socio-politically has come back full circle again, because we thought after these movies in the 90s and the wall coming down that progress had been made. And
if only.
I digress, so forgive me.
Yeah. Now, so if you were to take a trip into the Criterion Closet,
I've done it a few times.
Don't make Derek jealous. He's about to be jealous.
This will make it easy for you. What is the Gregg Araki movie in the Criterion Collection that you think is the movie that if people are going to see one of his films, in the collection is the one that they should watch?
Whew, that's a tough one.
I know.
Within the trilogy of the teen trilogy, you know, it's the same universe, but obviously different characters and, you know, similar situations, but somewhat quite, you know, I want to say totally fucked up, more raw. Doom Generation is just crazy, very angry, as Greg would describe it as 9 Inch Nails movie, and then Nowhere is like the big party movie. Maybe for me, it would be totally fucked up, though. A bit more dramatic and serious, but that was sort of that was my first entry into being an actor and meeting Greg and reading the script and just, you know, I didn't think that anybody felt some of the, you know, conflicts and, you know, things I was going up against and thinking, I think, you know, that were common for a lot of kids that age. Nobody was making movies about that. Nobody certainly was talking about it. And here was Greg in a script, and I had just met him and I'm reading it and it's like, well, how does this guy able to, I think verbatim, you know, there's a lot of the things that I was saying and the questions that I had about being lonely or being in love or outcast and not fitting in. I mean, I just had never read anybody put that down on paper the way Greg had. And so for me, it was, you know, yeah, I mean, it's acting, but, you know, it's also self-identifying with something in a way that I hadn't really up to that point in my life had that opportunity. And Greg gave that to me. And I think he gave that to a lot of people who watch his movies. And, you know, again, so to be a part of Criterion, supporting that and, you know, helping that, keep that, not just the voice alive, but preserving it for future generations is, yeah, it's probably the biggest honor for me so far of my lifetime.
Well, I saw the other Gregg Araki movies actually in theaters, but I didn't.
Wow, you're one of the 50 people.
He is.
We're both from LA. You know, you grew up in Covina. I grew up in Alhambra. I think I'm like a little older than you are, but I don't know enough, not older enough to make a difference in our east side of Los Angeles life experiences. But as you know, like generationally, because Scott Galloway talked about this, of like, you know, those of us in Gen X, like what we did was go to the movies and we saw like everything, good, bad, otherwise, like that's what you did with your friends. Like you would go and hang out at the movies, and especially in Los Angeles, because it's such a movie place, like that's socially how we would interact. So yeah, so you know, when I say I'm very familiar with your work in the 90s, like I saw SLC Punk because my dad was from Utah. So I spent a bit of my childhood in Salt Lake. So I was like, oh, I'm definitely watching this movie. And, you know, even though like I wasn't in the punk scene, but I was definitely like an outcast in Salt Lake City. So I know what this feels like. And then, the other Gregg Araki movies, which, you know, I watched Totally Effed Up last night in preparation of our discussion. And, you know, honestly, the thing about it that I love the most, you know, looking back on it 35 years later was, you know, what I liked about Issa Rae's series Insecure, of like, I watched it and I was like, this is the Los Angeles that I know. You know, that movie was shot like in all the places that I recognized, you know, under the now gone Arby's hat.
Poor Arby's. Poor a lot of these places, really. It's, you know, we weren't old enough to go out and drink back then and didn't have the money to do that. So all you could do was go find places that were you would go to a Denny's and drink coffee for 5 hours, or you would just go out and hang out with your friends at 3 a.m. and walk in parking lots.
Yeah.
Right.
Free. You know, there weren't cameras back then. People weren't watching you. You know, there was definitely this kind of there was a bit of liberation at that time. It was that in the sense that you weren't being tracked, you weren't being watched. You know, anytime you had to communicate with people, you actually had to call them up on the phone, and you had to show up, really. You know, and that was the whole thing, was showing up. And so it was a magical time. You know, I think, you know, for me, we were the generation where your mom could drop you off with $3.60, $3.50 to see the movie, a dime to call her after the movies to come pick you up after the movie's over. And that's the way we did things back then. I mean, it was, you know, you slept with the doors unlocked. I mean, it was a different time. It was a different time. You went out, you know, and told your mom you were going to ride around the block for 6 hours. Meanwhile, you're on some construction site, city over, or, you know, Billy Bob over there just fell off the tree and broke his arm. So you're not going to climb that tree anymore. That's how you learn, because Billy over there broke his arm. So no one's going to climb that tree anymore. And that's how we learn. That's how we learn stuff. Oh, you heard up to burn over there. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do what he did.
I think so much of what Gregg's movies tap into is, something that really struck me in watching Totally Effed Up, which is, wow, we really were like a generation that was in an underground. Like, I don't think at the time we really realized like that we were. But, obviously I knew consciously that like being gay was essentially against the law. But it never occurred to me that I was like breaking the law routinely on a daily basis, right? But a lot of what Gregg's movies tap into are people who are really in the margins of like legality or society, like what society considers right and proper, what the law considers right and proper. And, some of them make terrible choices, but
who didn't back then, Derek?
Us agree with too. None of us are going to live by those guidelines. There's just no way.
Right. But they just are sort of living in an otherwise unoccupied space in society, which I think is what Gregg really sort of taps into, which in watching back, I was like, oh yeah, that actually was really freeing to be in this space where you were living without the expectations of society and sometimes even the law. And in a lot of ways, you weren't really hassled about it either. Like, because our parents had sort of let us go, there wasn't like the kind of 1950s, you need to conform pressure necessarily. So I don't know. It's hard because you don't want to overly romanticize things that had truly terrible aspects to them, which the 90s definitely did. But there also was a certain, thread of freedom in there, which is great to revisit in Gregg's films from that period.
I agree. Well, it's that whole the rebellious side of it, the non-conformity side of it, the doing whatever you need to do. It's more important to find yourself and accept yourself than to shape yourself into something that the world wants you to be that you don't identify with. And I think, it's at the end of the day, no matter what generation we're all looking for that. And, and my heart goes out to the youth now with all the crazy stuff going on where they don't have everything they do is being watched. Everything they do is being criticized. Everything they do is being looked at instead of giving the opportunity to go out and just find yourself. And there's a magic in that, with the characters, I think by the time, they're looking for themselves and their place and who they are in society, and it's kind of resolved to the fact that they live on the outskirts of it and totally fucked up. But by the time you get to Nowhere, which is kind of amazing because I think the new generation has been able to achieve this, it was for us for utopian society where in the 90s we're imagining, the youth being a little bit more open about things, socially, what's socially acceptable, sexually, politically, it was challenging sort of all these things, which is something we always had done. I think, there's this funny thing that's been going around, I won't get too much, I'm not going to get political about it, but this guy talks about how he's pretty upset that all these people in bands when he was in 20s sung about the government and never trusted it. And all of a sudden they grew up and they joined some party and then they started voting and acting like their opinion mattered about this government that was never good to begin with. But all of a sudden something changed along the way. It's like, no, you trust them now? Like, what? We didn't trust them back then. Why would you trust them now? There's nothing to trust about that. And so, and then of course he gets a little, I won't get it. He gets a little crude at the end about like telling people off about it. But I thought it was really quite funny because I thought it was right. It's like something else this other author had said. They had asked this other author why he never wrote about politics. And he said, why? Everybody knows the bacon's always been burning. And I'm going to have to agree with that. But, I'm not, I'm not overtly political. I'm not anti-political. I don't like to pull it into things. I do think it's a time that, whether people want it or not, we need to like be really aware of what's happening right now because things that are happening now that never happened in our lifetime.
Right.
Yeah. Scary things.
Things that we warn people about that if they took certain steps and certain things were put in place that this would happen. So we warned them. We did warn them.
We tried our best.
Our best, and we're still trying our best.
Now, one of the things that in doing the research here, one of the things that is crazy to me is about how, because obviously you did a lot of independent films in the 90s, but not exclusively, because you were also in one of the biggest films of the 90s as well, Independence Day. But tell everyone how you ended up in Independence Day, because it is a crazy LA story.
I love this.
That is a crazy LA story. I mean, it's one of those things, whatever you're doing in life that you're trying to achieve, you have these dreams, and for actors, one of them was that you'd get discovered or you'd meet a filmmaker in a restaurant or a bar. And I mean, that's exactly what happened twice, to be honest. That's how I met Gregg.
Right.
I was 18 and I had come to Hollywood where I was record shopping before. And at this point, I was living out in the South Bay, Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach. I'd moved from my father's in Carina. And, I was just out record shopping, to get import stuff, to get the stuff that was outside of the mainstream and, outside of, you had to go find these import shops in the late 80s. And so I found them in Hollywood and started coming out to Hollywood, frequenting this cafe. And I used to see this guy always in the cafe. And I thought it was so great that he was always doing his homework. And I was sitting there loitering or buying records and getting free coffee from the guys I made friends with because I was pretty dirt poor at the time. Turned out that kid doing homework was actually Gregg Araki writing the script for Totally Fucked Up. And he'd been in post at that point, moved into post for The Living End. And I'd seen him for the course of a few months. And then, one of the guys that worked at the cafe was taking headshots for me. And I was, I just audited some acting class. I'd done some theater. I'd done some extra work. So I was actively trying to get into movies. And Gregg came up to me one day and just asked if I was an actor, if I'd be interested in movies. And he makes these sort of no budget, like queer John Hughes films. And I really identified with John Hughes. And it was really, I give him a lot of courage because he didn't know if I was, gay or straight or anti-film. He didn't know if I was going to punch him in the mouth for asking this. And, sent me the script. And I have to say, even to this day, probably one of the greatest things I ever read was the script. Totally Fucked Up. Didn't know that you could talk about those things in a movie. Didn't know you could show those things or do these things. And in a lot of ways, like I was saying before, that was something that I identified with. So, I mean, it's like you're acting, but you're using something that you identify with to take it even further. So I think it gives it this authenticity that I'd always been looking for in all the, I grew up playing music. I still play music in 2 bands now and I'm directing a music documentary. So that's a big thing for me, authenticity. And I never felt since then or probably now that and as anything as authentic as Gregg's scripts, his films, but his scripts in particular, which are works of art in their own. And that became a big turning point for me. So I went and made this no budget movie with Gregg, and forgive me for being a little long-winded. And then we did Doom Generation a couple of years later, and I'm working at this restaurant to get by, to pay my bills. Because I think we did Totally Fucked Up. We did for no money. Right. And then Doom Generation we just did for SAG Scale. And, while working at this restaurant, Totally Fucked Up was getting ready to, just played at Sundance. And I just now had done Doom Generation, and that was getting ready to come the next year. And I remember Jackie, it was this French restaurant called La Poubelle, and she came in one night. She's like, Jimmy, very, very big Hollywood director, filmmaker. I want you to take their table and you got schmooze them. I'm like, look, Jackie, I appreciate that. I love you. I'm not here to schmooze with your customers. I know I'm not a great waiter, but whether it's acting or music or waiting, whatever it is, I honestly, I have a way of doing things. And it's like I just try to put myself in 100% into everything I'm doing, to commit myself, no matter whether it's acting or waiting. It's the same thing. So I'm not a great waiter, but I'm going to do the best I can, Jackie. I'm here to just be the best waiter I can be. And I went up to them and they recognized me from Totally Fucked Up. He was just sort of like, oh, hey, in the Gregg Araki movie, Totally Fucked Up. And I was shocked. It's sort of like, well, yeah. And this is Roland Emmerich, the director, and it's sort of, well, yeah, but how do you know that movie hasn't come out? I mean, it's just played at Sundance. Like, yeah, no, I saw it at Sundance. I saw The Living End at Sundance. Gregg Araki is one of my favorite filmmakers. I love his movies. So are you still acting? Are you doing anything else? I was like, well, of course. Can I take your order? And it did really went just like that. And he's like, yeah, so you're still acting. You're doing anything now? I'm like, well, coincidentally, I just did another movie with Gregg, earlier in the year called Doom Generation. It's going to be at Sundance in January. And This was end of 94. So he was sort of like, well, I'll be there because I go every year. I saw Totally Fucked Up there. I saw The Living End there. I just did Stargate. It was the biggest movie opening for that time of the year at that point. And so I'm getting ready to write this other movie. And I'm like, well, that's great. Congratulations on everything. Maybe I'll see you at Sundance. So we showed Doom Generation at Sundance. Of course, there's walkouts. I'm watching the first time realizing this movie's even crazier than it read on script. And the script's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
So I know at this point what I'm making. I know people have walked out. I know it's going to be controversial. I know it's going to be banned, which it was for a bit in some places. I was also quite proud and still quite proud of that. If the people can't handle it, then maybe they need to take a deeper, closer look within themselves. But I digress again. That's another story. So I'm watching it, and then I get the Q&A to go down to the front, and it's Rose McGowan and Jonathan Sheck and Greg and myself. We start walking down, and someone taps me on the shoulders. I'm walking down, and I look, and it's Roland, and Roland Emmerich, director, Stargate, just looks at me and goes, Jimmy, oh my God. And I'm thinking, well, I won't be working with him, right? That's fine. I always know what I'm involved with and what I'm doing. It's other people. Do they know? Are they ready for me? Or are they, that's more where I was always coming from. And so do the Q&A, and, he loves the movie, and sure enough, come back to LA a week later, and he doesn't come in the restaurant. He'd been coming in at least once a week. Doesn't come in the restaurant for 2-3 weeks. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm used to that. And I'm, there'll be more of that in the future, I'm sure. It's okay. My movies aren't for everybody. And 3 weeks later, he comes in with Dean Devlin, the writer, producing partner he had at the time. It's just sort of, Jimmy, that movie, just wow. Just that movie was so crazy, I said, sorry we haven't been in here. After Sundance, we went to Mexico and wrote this little movie called Independence Day. Well, it turns out that Dean and I were writing it, and we just saw Doom Generation. And actually, there's this part we were thinking you'd be great for. Are you busy this summer? What are you doing? Would you like to be in the movie? This is now that's twice this has happened to me. This is everyone's dream.
Right.
No, not only am I working, but he loves my movies that I'm doing with Greg, but he wants to work with me too. I mean, you can't really, honestly, that is all the end all be all. You can't ask for more than that. And so I told him, I'm like, well, I'm doing another movie with Greg this summer called Nowhere. But I would love to do your movie. And there was a moment where it almost didn't work out because the movies were conflicting, filming at the same time. And 20th Century Fox didn't know who I was. And certainly from the movies that I was known for, didn't want me in the movie. Really didn't want me in their movie, honestly.
Sure.
And Roland fought for me. He was like, no, I love his movies. I think he's a great actor, and I want him in my movie. And if it wasn't for him giving me that shot, I never would have been in it. And I have to say that, kudos to Greg as well, because at the time, since the movies were conflicting, there was a problem working out the schedule. So Roland Emmerich and Gregg Araki got on the phone together, told the studio to go fuck themselves, excuse me, and worked it out. So I'd work a week in LA with Greg, then I'd take my earrings out and change my part and fly to Utah and do Independence Day for a week, then fly back to LA and put my earrings back on, change my part, film Nowhere. And I did this for about a month and a half. So I finished Nowhere, and then I finished Independence Day. So I actually shot those movies at the exact same time, if you can believe that. Literally at the same time I was filming this film. So again, this moment in my life where it's like making two movies, doing this little tiny indie movie, doing this huge studio movie. I love both of these things that I'm involved with. If anything, I've been so long-winded. I just want to say that, thank you for having this conversation. It reminds me of how fortunate I've been, honestly. And I feel so lucky, and I'm so grateful, and I'm so thankful, and, for the opportunities I was given. Because if these guys hadn't have reached out and given that to me, I mean, I don't know what would have happened. If I'd not met Greg, I don't even know if I would have made it to 20. I was pretty depressed, pretty suicidal, pretty, full of that teen angst, and, Greg and his films and making movies helped me find my identity. It gave me a direction in life, for lack of a better, praise.
But sometimes that's exactly how these things work out, right? Like you can't always anticipate or see when something happens, how it's going to put your life onto a totally different trajectory. And yet it does. And then when you look back on it, you're like, holy shit, that was crazy.
It was, well, we're talking about trying to find yourself, which is, I think, is so great about, being involved with a lot of the movies, including Cutaways, and like being a part of this sort of other, not popular music, not popular life, but something else. I know for me growing up, we were always very experimental sexually, guys with guys, girls with girls, girls with guys. It was a very open thing, but nobody talked about it. Everybody was very homophobic, and I just thought that everybody did that. And I was not correct.
Right.
But that's what I thought everybody was. I'm like, society's just very closed, and since we're getting older, we're getting more open, and now I met someone who's open, and now we can just kind of talk about this more in the open. And, I want to say certainly it's been great to see the new generations be able to embrace something that was difficult for us, where you were afraid of being beat up, you were afraid of being shot, you were afraid of being killed back then. So it's it's incredible to see how things have, kind of risen up and changed, and in some ways, also have gone back. And, it's life is wild.
Yeah, it really is.
It's wild and crazy, which, saying all that is somehow brings me back to this place where I feel like I can go play Sammy Slade and have just the time of my life. Because isn't that what it's all about? Making money.
So with Cutaways, this is a bit of a return to the sort of new queer cinema era for you as an actor. So talk to us about the movie and your role.
Well, it's kind of I'm happy to hear that. I've kind of been doing, I have been doing queer movies on and off, I think this whole time. It's just they don't always come out or very big, or they don't get into a festival and you don't hear them. I've been lucky at this point. I've been making maybe 10, 12 movies a year for the past years, I want to say. So I've definitely added about 100 movies to my roster in the last 10 years. Wow. Not all of them most of them are not good. But some of them are really, but they're all
work a lot.
Yeah, well, they're all, I will say, but they're all interesting. I'm working with people who are experimenting and trying stuff. It doesn't always work, but that's, I'm not here. It's nice to make money, and it's nice to be a part of these big movies that, are fun stories to tell. But, for me as a musician and an artist that I've always been since I was young, I like to challenge the status quo, and I like to tell stories outside of the box. And, Cutaways was another opportunity for me to do something like that, which for me, I think that is my wheelhouse. I can go do studio movies, and I can do television shows, and I'm certainly not adverse to doing them the way I used to be, because for me, I consider myself definitely an actor. But I am more attracted to movies and stories that exist on the outside of the box that, are queer and are different, and, have something for a story to tell, or something to say, that's a story or a life, something that I've been a part of, including things like, I'm not Sammy Slade, and I haven't done the things Sammy Slade's done, but I've known people like that. And I've worked with people like that. And I've been friends with people like that, only to discover later that they were like that. Like, oh, wait, yeah, I'm a little young and but I'm able to connect the dots together. Oh, okay, yeah, no. So over the years, I've had the pleasure and the opportunity of, again, meeting and playing in movies with people like that. So it's been kind of a joy to kind of take the piss out of it, so to speak, and dive in and play that person. I know I've gotten questions about this, about identifying with the character in some ways, and I do in a twisted way, not in the bad ways, which I know people are like, what are those bad ways? But I mean it more in the sense of, what it was for me, and, especially watching, Mark's other movies, is like, there already seems to be a rapport between, Jason and Silas and Fernando and Diogo, and they're all incredible actors, and they all have this, they do have this sort of chemistry. So it was wonderful to be kind of welcomed in by them, with open arms, which made it very easy for me to go in and play this character of Sammy, sort of this slimy producer who's willing to do anything he can do to make a buck. And hey, I'm also a bit of a filmmaker too. Maybe not the kind of films that you guys like, but I enjoy the things that I make, as crazy as they might be. So yeah, I get off on it a little bit too. And that's where I find this relation to me as an actor and Sammy as the producer. Is like, yeah, I like to be a part, and I do kind of get off on this stuff, that's like I'm overtly like sexual and outside of the box. And I mean, again, I think it's just because that's the wheelhouse. I mean, that's how I was raised. It's where I come from, And so it's, being an actor, you're not always playing yourself, and you don't want to be playing yourself and doing these things. But it's nice to be a part of telling stories where it's something that you relate to. Out of a lot of these movies I've done, yeah, I'm playing cops, I'm playing detectives, I'm playing these things that I'm not really overtly connected to at all. It's not something I want to do in my life. So it's always fun to go and, get a little wicked.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's the essential part of being an actor is you have to find what is the humanity within the character. Because, I mean, actors play like bad people all the time. And obviously you don't have to be a bad person to play a bad person. But also, you have to find something for yourself in that character that is relatable or good or like as a motivation of that person, like, well, maybe they're doing bad things for, a reason that they think is a good reason, even if it's a selfish, terrible reason, whatever. So you have to find that for yourself, because otherwise, what are you? You're Snidely Whiplash and you're like twirling your mustache by the railroad track.
Yeah, but then that's all you're doing is twirling. And
Right.
And for me, first off, when I read the script, I couldn't stop laughing. I thought it was so great. It's such a great script. And then to watch the guys bring it to life. I mean, for me, I don't want to sound, maybe because I can't villainize this character because I do identify with him in a lot of ways. So I did I got a big joy of playing him and diving into those motivations of what was pushing him in the direction of being this type of person, getting off on these types of things. And I can relate. I guess I got to have a darker side to myself. Not that I would ever hurt anybody, or take advantage of anyone, to be quite honest. But, yeah, I am attracted to the darker things in life, so there's a bit of,
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's like, something Mark Twain said, we all have a dark side. Like the moon, we all have a dark side. Unless you learn not to embrace it, you become something kind of you don't want to become, people that wouldn't enjoy being around. So it's important to embrace those things, I think, to recognize it and not, when people try to get rid of these, it's like the elephant in the room. You try not to think about it, it's all you're going to think about. So it's like, that's probably not the best approach, is to try to just negate something that's a part of you, but learn to kind of come to terms with it and embrace it. Because there's nothing wrong with it. As long as you're not hurting anybody. So, and I'd like to think, I don't want to spoil the movie, but, if I'm not hurting him, am I not doing anything wrong? I mean, he's dead, No one's getting hurt. Maybe make a little money. Sell some units. Nothing wrong with that. It's a win-win for everybody.
Now, I know that you personally are a big fan of the cons, like, Comic-Con and that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And you also attend a fair number of cons as a performer, there. So for people who have never been to any of these fan conventions, what do you think is the appeal as somebody who has basically been on both sides of the table?
Well, I used to go as a fan.
Right.
And honestly, like I would go and I wouldn't talk to the celebrities, but I'd go and I'd see and be like, oh, that's so cool. Look, so-and-so is here. It's like, wow. It's like, go talk to him. Like, well, I don't need to talk to him. I just needed to see him. And like, this is really cool, because not only is it weird if I talk to him or don't talk to him, but pretty much everyone else I'm there with feels the same way. So I may not know these people, but I already have so much in common with all these people I've never met. And so it's a space for like-minded people. We're like geeks, and something on the outside. It's interesting how it's become very mainstream now, but so I was going in the late 90s. It was kind of this, you were a geek doing those things. And it was like, I grew up proudly as a geek. I'm still a big geek, and I when it comes to my toys or collection stuff or like old genre stuff. I just love that. You know, I always have, and learn to embrace my inner geek. And so I remember when my booking agent that I'm with now, he was like, "Oh, you know, hey, Donnie Darko, you know, you could go do this." And I was like, I remember when it took him a couple of years for me to agree because I just couldn't believe it. It's like, you're weird. What? Me, man? Nobody wants to talk to me. So I didn't want to talk. I didn't end up doing it for a while, like a couple of years. And then when I did do it on the other side, it felt a little odd at first, to be honest. Like, you know, it's just, I mean, it's still, if I think about it too much, it's a little odd for me because I am such a really open person that, you know, for me, it's like if you just talk to me anywhere, I'll stop and talk to you, you know, and answer any questions to the best of my ability. As long as I'm not like in the middle of something, I'm more than willing to give all my time, really, because it's when I started going to those conventions myself, it was people that I did end up meeting, and not necessarily celebrities, but people who, you know, had the patience to give me all their time, understood that, you know, when you're at a thing like this, that's what this is about, stopping and talking to people and asking them about things, and, you know, and connecting them, being like, wow, I just met so-and-so and they were so cool, and I got this picture, and you carry this memory with you of like, it kind of negates or dissolves this boundary between you and the audience, and you kind of can come together. And it's like, I like to let my fans know, or the audience know, like, you know, I'm just like you guys, you know, hey, you know, we can go down and get drunk and throw up together, or we can have a really nice meal together. It's like, I mean, you know, because there is this, and I had it too, and I still, you know, and it's funny because I still have it when I work with actors or do shows with actors I've not met. I get starstruck and shy. It's like, we were talking, like, no, I don't know him. It's like, but she's like, no, I don't look at things like that. No, I don't look at, but I'm this thing and you're this thing. So that's how I never have, and I just don't, you know. It's like, I think the moment that I walk off set and I'm not working, it's like, I'm not an actor. You know what I mean? Maybe I've done these movies and I'm known for these things, but I'm just Jimmy. So if you come and talk to me, or if you just want to hang out, and I've made,
I'm going to tell my daughter that, and when she stalks you, just remember that you said this.
No, it's true. I mean, I think I have a lot of fans out there that could attest for this. It's like, in a weird way, it's like I've met some of my closest friends that, like, I guess they started off as fans, but now we've just, like, my really good friend Jack Morrissey. He was the first person to reach out and contact me after Totally Fucked Up. I want to say this was like 93. And I've been friends with him all these years, and he's become really a close friend of mine.
That's awesome.
And yeah. I mean, I love the guy dearly. And there's been a lot of people that I've met throughout the years that I'm very thankful to have met and to known them. And, you know, I could say that it, you know, in a way it validates things for me, but I don't think it's about that. It's at the end of the day, for me, the most amazing thing here, being talking to you or meeting them or making the movies, is it's always been about that human connection. It's just connecting with people. You know, growing up on the outside, growing up very outcast, all I ever wanted to do was connect. And making movies and making music, there's no other better way for me to connect with people than that. You know, it's life is about connection. You know, and so that's one of my, I think, my mantras that I try to live by. It's like, I think if we were more connected, you know, and I don't mean in the internet sense, because I think we've gone from this age of information connection to the age of disinformation, the age of disconnection.
Yeah.
So connection is the most important thing, you know, and, you know, it's as wonderful as the internet and all these things are, and to be able to do Zoom with you, there's still no better way than to connect face to face and sit down and smile warmly and be able to touch your hand and feel the warmth of another human body, and give a hug and look them in the eyes. And that's true connection. And we do this every day, and it's in such little pieces. And I know that the younger generation has such a problem with it, but they got it going on too. And it's like, and it's just a matter of looking someone in the eye, or maybe holding their hand, or giving them a hug, and the physical connection, and you know, just the tangible connection of being able to touch, you know. And I don't mean that in a perverted way, everybody. And
Yeah.
those willing parties, then I wholly support that and encourage that. Because with everything I'm saying, I think more than anything, it's about the human connection. And you know,
Yeah.
I know I was speaking, you know, not meaning to go back to Gregg, but Gregg is one of my great friends, and we were just hanging out last week, and couple, Greg and Nathan Bexton from Nowhere. And, we always get together constantly, at least once a month, try to stay in touch. But, it is always about that, making that connection. And so, he's got a new movie coming out as well called I Want Your Sex. We hear that the younger generation, of course, with a lot of horrible things going on, it's, and being disconnected, that, they're not really being as intimate, not being together, not really having sex. And
They're not.
That's an important thing. I mean, not just coming from my generation of the movies I make, that's an important part of connecting people, even bad sex. That's an important part of connecting with people, knowing what you like, what you don't like.
Right.
These things that's I think the end all be all of human connection.
Let me tell you something. My daughter is 18 and has not had sex and has zero interest in having sex. And I, by her age, was a whore. So I'm like, what is happening? Like, I'm like, are you okay? Are you broken? What's going on? Like, I'm actually kind of worried about it.
Well, that's why it's so important, because it's an important part of just being a human being. It's
yes.
Being alive. And, with all the, and it's sad because it's like people are afraid. And, and if I look back, and I'm sure if we all look back, honestly, there are things about being afraid of it until you kind of go over that hump, so to speak. No pun intended. You got to get over that hump. But but it's an important part of, of growing up and connecting with people, I think, in the world. Again, good sex, bad sex. But sex is important. It's an important way to connect. You can have sex where it's just sex. You can have sex where it's also connected with love.
Right.
Different ways of connecting with people. And I don't want to walk away like, oh, Jimmy did this interview, was telling everyone how to spook everyone. I'm kind of saying that, but I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that connection at the end of the day is what is the most important thing. It's why we're all do what we do. Whether we're actors, plumbers, or the thing that drives us forward is human connection. I think there's no worse thing. You hear these stories about people being abandoned on an island, left by themselves, and what becomes of them, or experiments where people are put in a dark cave for 3 months and they start losing their mind pretty quickly and go insane. And so we know that how important the human connection is, not just for sanity, but then for health.
Mm-hmm.
Touch is also healing. And so these things that, I think that we live, again, in a society where we're as connected as we are, which is more connected than we've ever been technologically. I don't think we've ever been as disconnected. And so
I agree.
It's trying to push those connections forward, whether it's with Doom Generation or it's Cutaways or it's Pink Flamingos or whatever it is. It's like Star Wars. It doesn't matter what it is, but being able to find something and connect. And then that's what I love about the shows. So sorry, I go long-winded, I go around circles when I come back. But this convention is a place to connect with people who feel all those things.
Yeah.
And share in that ideal, and so there's a real big magic in these conventions, which I think start off for sci-fi conventions, and I do these sci-fi conventions, and I can't tell you how moved I am that half of it's like, honestly, probably Doom Generation. No, it's Donnie Darko and Independence Day and then Gone in 60 Seconds. And then half of it will be like Doom Generation, Nowhere, totally fucked up. And it's like people respond. There's this, it's wild, but it's like those movies have gone to become something that we could only ever hope for, beyond what we could have hoped for in the 90s. We just wanted to make these movies and put them out to connect with the people that shared these ideals with us, shared the love of music, shared these ideas that were kind of punk rock and balls to the wall, like crazy and outside of the box. And knowing that, something that, again, that Craig and I have always said to our fans, and something that we did when we met each other and found each other, is these movies and these conventions and this music that you listen to is a way to find the people in your tribe. And that's what the most important thing is, finding your tribe. And Greg and I have always said this so for your daughter and for the youth, and I mean, for all of us, it stands throughout the course of your life, but you find the people in your tribe and you find the people you have shared interests and shared love of, and then you have that real human connection with.
Absolutely.
And I would imagine that, especially as a young actor in your trips to Sundance, I'm curious about what your memories of that time were, because I have been to Sundance a few times myself. I actually went in 91 and 92. So I was not there I was there for The Living End, which I saw at Sundance.
Well, that was the breakout of the queer new wave, really.
Yeah.
So you were there at like the peak time, to be quite honest, because that's what kicked everything off. You know, it was Tom Kalin and
right, because I was
Poison and Gregg Araki's The Living End, and I mean that was a time. Allison Andrews, Gas Food and Lodging. What a year that was.
Yeah. Yeah, I was there for that. I saw Swoon. I saw Living End and Poison. Yeah, like because I
was so lucky. I met
I was
Craig
newly
Chester
out.
there and Jim Lyons, God rest his beautiful soul. And,
Yeah.
you know, people, what it was for me is it was life-changing to meet these people and be a part of something, you know, like that. I'm still to this day, I mean, the Sundance is bigger, but it'll never be have the magic, or at least for me, that it had back then when we were like these little movies that would have been nowhere, we would have been nothing. And you go to these festivals and you see that these stories and these films are embraced, and that, you know, so at 18, I didn't know people made movies like that. I didn't know there were other people out there that, you know, that shared my view of things. And it really was, you know, it changed my world meeting Gregg and making movies with him, and then going to Sundance and meeting these other filmmakers and these other actors and finding out there was this whole contingent that you're not alone.
right.
At the end of the day, that we weren't alone. And then that comes back to that thing of like coming full circle of like connecting, that human connection and connecting. And so I've found my connection with the world and with people and with myself through making movies and through, you know, acting and meeting people of you know, like-minded, you know, perceptions about the world and themselves and everything. And that's been not just a game changer, but a lifesaver for me. I find myself, like in Cutaways, continually inspired, you know, by Mark, by Silas, by Diogo, by Fernando, by, you know, Jason, their performances and their enthusiasm, and, you know, because they're so much younger than me too. So it's great to see them almost like carry that flame and keep it going. Because it's a fire.
Before we go, I have to ask you about another one of your movies that is one of my favorite movies, which is Go.
That was in the 90s. So again, that
right.
was part of that time where I felt like I was just so lucky. Every movie I got to be a part of was like something that I wholeheartedly wanted to be doing. You know, I've just seen Swingers, and I was so excited to be working with Doug Liman and John August, such a great writer. And then it was so fun, like the actors I was working with, Taye Diggs and Desmond Askew and Breckin Meyer, and then in Our Story, and Jimmy Schubert, but as well as, you know, meeting the actors in the other stories and knowing them, like Nathan Bexton, who just come from nowhere, who plays Manny in it, who's in it with Katie Holmes and Sarah Polley and Timothy Oliphant, and, you know, so you have these incredible people like Scott Wolf and Jay Moore and Bill Fichtner, and I mean, like a powerhouse movie of actors. Honestly, everyone who was huge fans with then, and I'm a huge fan of now, and couldn't believe I had the opportunity to work with these people. Now I'm meeting with you guys. I can't believe I've had it's so weird. Yeah. Lucky. I don't know how it happened. I mean, one day people are going to figure out I'm just a big fake, and that'll be it.
I mean, I think that the thing for you has been, you know, you have been open to the opportunities that come to you. And this is something that, you know, I talk a lot about, because I've had a lot of, you know, great breaks in my life. And it is because, like, when the breaks show up, you gotta, you know, when the door opens, you gotta walk through it. Like, and not everybody recognizes in the moment, like, oh, this is a door I gotta walk through. And, but I think that you have just, throughout your life, you have just been really open to the experiences that come to you. And it brings you to a lot of different places. And, you know, one of the things as an actor that I think you know as well as anyone, given how many movies you've done, is, you know what? You read a script, you know a director's past work, you know the other actors' work, and you like come together and, you know, you have a great time or a bad time working with people, whatever, but you never know what the end product is going to be or how the audience is going to respond.
True.
And so you just kind of have to show up, do your best, see what happens, and, you know, and then you got to, you know, leave it in the hands of, you know, the universe of how it goes from there.
That's exactly what I tell people. You know, it's like when I make a movie, I go in, you know, and the hope is to have the time of my life, because when I walk away, it's all out of my hands past that point. And so that's why, again, talking about the connection, talking about expressing yourself. For me, I'm never more alive, to be quite honest, than when I'm filming a movie or I'm playing a live show with a band, because that's when I'm actually in the midst of making it and doing it. Anything past that, it is a little bit different than acting. I mean, even with you, it's amazing to have the opportunity to sit and talk to you both and talk to promote these films. But that's a different part of acting, I think, than making movies themselves. That's
right.
Probably more of like a movie star thing, which I don't think I'm very good at. I think I'm way too down to earth for that. I'll always be way too down to earth for that. I just like, yeah. I mean,
that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, I think.
To be, people, oh, you did this and seen this, but at the end of it's like I've spent the latter part, because it was, you finding yourself not just sexually, but professionally and adult-wise as you're in the late teens and early 20s, and a business like the film business that I'm in, that we're talking about, could get corrupted. It could be very dark. You could take a lot of different paths. And this was something I wanted to make not only just a lifelong career out of, but something that I wanted to make a positive experience, that it didn't have to be a negative experience. It didn't have to be about these horror stories you hear. When it comes down to it, it's like you hear horror stories about every career. Right. And so then what would be the most important thing for me to do? So even in this business is find my tribe. Then when I find my tribe, I know I'm safe with the people that I'm with, and I can be the person I am and do what I want to do. And they can too. And then we thrive like that. And so that's been the idea. And I can't think of any more creative place than a film set, from Totally Fucked Up all the way to Cutaways, that give us the opportunity to be liberated and to be free and to play and have a great time creating something that we hope that people respond to.
Right.
And again, that's where I'll find, it's so great to hear that you guys like the movie and respond to my other films as well, because that's been, for me, that's the part that hasn't changed. It's like from Totally Fucked Up all the way to Cutaways is, working on having that same sort of connection with my other fellow actors and with the story, and just having a hell of a time making it and telling it, and hoping that when people watch it, they get giddy in their seats.
Yeah. It sounds like you have a super fun career and you really enjoy it. And you know what? That's the name of the game.
It is really, it is, and it's like, it's okay to make movies to have a good time. It's okay to make movies that have a statement.
Yeah.
And it's okay to make movies that don't do anything at all.
Just to entertain.
Yeah.
To entertain. Yeah. I prefer the first two, to be quite honest, but I'm okay with the third, And sometimes I just gotta, a person's got to pay their bills, right?
That's
yes.
right. No said, work is work. That is true. Well, James, I appreciate you taking time with us today. It's been great chatting with you about all this stuff. And, I wasn't lying at the beginning. I am very familiar with your career over the years. So it is really great to have you with us to talk about.
It's so great to be here with you both. And, yeah, honestly, it's I think I'm blushing a little bit. It's anytime someone wants to talk to me, I mean, I think I'm taken aback, honestly. So
well, it's been a pleasure, I will say.
Are we still recording?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I haven't wrapped yet.
I'll tell you guys one little secret, but it's going to have to be for when we're done. Oh wait, this is not going to air until February, right?
Yeah, it'll be in February. Yeah.
So I guess I can say this because the cat will be out of the bag by then. I have Keep Your Eyes Peeled and I Want Your Sex, because you may see me pop up in Gregg's new movie.
Okay.
Ah, exciting.
That's a secret. And the reason why it's a secret, which is funny because by the time this comes out, it will be February. There's no keeping the cat in the bag once it screens in Sundance in the next few days. So it's
That's right.
The bag that I'm in it. So that I think past that point, it won't be a secret anymore. I can talk about it. But all this time, it's sort of like it's a nod to our fans and our,
That's awesome.
So now it has been 35 years of working with Gregg.
Yeah.
What do you think is the key to your longevity as friends and as collaborators in art?
Well, I've said it a few times. I've repeated it. It's pretty simple. And I've repeated it, a few times during the interview, or I should say reiterated it.
Right.
because repeat it makes it sound like, oh, I had to say it again. No, I reiterate this over and over because I think this is magical. And it's when Gregg and I had met, we realized that we were from the same tribe. We found someone from our tribe, and those are the people that you hold on to like family. Like, I know that, you know, and my mother used to say this, that, you know, it's like I wasn't really close to my family, so my friends were my family. And Gregg's very much like family to me, you know. Yeah, my easily one of my best friends, and you know, I love him so dearly. And I think it's really just that love and that friendship that keeps, you know, coming back together over and over again over all these years, you know, like-minded way of seeing things. And, you know, we're like two peas in a pod. I mean, I used to say like, oh, I don't know. And is it? But yeah, I mean, without a doubt, you know, especially, you know, after seeing him, I mean, we just have that, you know, 35-year deep friendship, unspoken friendship and love that's just only grown since the moment that we had met.
That's beautiful.
I mean, I have to say, you know, of people who met randomly in a coffee house on Melrose, you know, you got real lucky, you know, at the beginning to meet somebody that you could have this kind of friendship and connection with for 35 years. So I think it's pretty great.
Me too.
Yeah. You know, again, you know, I just consider myself very, very lucky, very fortunate. I've been very fortunate. And I think it's something you were saying is being open to the possibilities and the opportunities that were in front of me, and the friendship, and, you know, same thing with love and sex. You know, you got to be open to those things. And so learning to be, you know, it's tough when you're afraid, because we close up when we're afraid, but, you know, it's trying to be open to things and making movies that, you know, kind of motivate people to be more open to things. So we can all connect. I think at the end of the day, that's just what life is about. Not even movies or whatever we do, but that's what life's about.
Amazing.
All right. Well, our thanks to James Duval for being with us. His new film is Cutaways, and it is available now on Amazon Prime, so you can check it out there. And you can find him on social media. He's going to post more on social media in 2020.
Post more. Yeah, it'll probably mostly come from Instagram, but yeah, I'll post more. I'll be retweeting. Gregg Araki is on Facebook, by the way. He's under Desperate Pictures on Facebook. So for your grandmas and your aunts and your uncles, they can go check out his website there.
Or Derek and Romaine.
That's
yeah,
right.
Or Jimmy. Yeah, I'd still very much use Facebook as well. Facebook. But yeah, so that's where you can, you know, and so Gregg's kind of the one who motivated me to be more pushing into doing the social media. And we've got a lot, you know, between the both of us. I've got a lot of movies coming out and a lot of stuff to start sharing. So I think It's going to, with Cutaways, it's going to, you know, break the dam open.
Excellent. Well, you can find him there on Instagram, Real James Duval, Duval.
And only because there was some fake James Duval, honestly, asking people for money.
What?
Rude.
I'm not kidding. There was these James Duvals going on, because I used to just be big questions with this James Duval. Right. And there were all these James Duvals on there with my picture, DMing people going, hey, I have a membership card, and if you buy the membership card, you know, and I'm like, and then my friends sent this to me. And then I had to put out a post going, I do not charge to be my friend, and there are no membership cards, and I don't ask people for money. I will never ask you for money. That will not come from me. That does not come from me. And I reported it to Instagram, and I reported it to Facebook, and they said that they were not violating any guidelines.
That's messed up.
No protection for that or me or what people were doing, or people DMing, pretending to be me. So I had to put up, because that other atrocious orange potato head Antichrist is the real whatever. And so I hate that I have that on my thing now.
Right.
But ever since I changed that, I'm like, my friend's like, well, you can't change it because people know you now. So I almost have to put that disclaimer, like, you know, I kind of hate my social media handle because of that, because I really hate that. I mean, I hated that guy since I was 9. End of story. I won't say anything else other than that. If you can't see that past 9 year, we can't help you. We can't help you. Sorry, there's no helping you. I knew it at 9. If you don't know as an adult, there's no helping you.
True that, yo.
I can't believe that we got this social media revelation for like right at the end, but I'm glad. I always love a good juicy nugget at the end. So fantastic. Thanks once again for being with us. Everybody, you're listening to Derek and Romaine. Well, there you have it. The end of another perfect episode of Derek and Romaine. And if you want more great fun, go to dnrstudios.com and subscribe to get our show every day. And don't forget, for DNR Plus subscribers, you can use the DNR Cast app for iPhone, available now in the App Store.